Making a successful game is next to impossible. When a company manages to capture lightning in a bottle, it's easy to forget about all the time they spent out in the rain waiting for it. For Nippon Ichi, their lightning was Disgaea. With a story that balanced humor and emotion well, gameplay that kept a decent challenge throughout its run, and systems that rewarded you for learning them, it's not what we're going to be talking about today. Disgaea's older sister had a rough time out of the gate, with its first release being heavily censored to avoid upsetting the church. It's a strategy game without any strategy, and a love story that would end with someone not being allowed within 100 yards of a school. Kids, today we're learning about La Pucelle. Hit start, bam, we're introduced to our protagonist, the demon-hunting La Pucelle, belonging to the Church of the Holy Maiden. Our main character is Priye, a young woman with a lot of ambition.
You want to be the next Maiden of Light, right? Well, don't waste time with this nonsense.
Her mature for his age younger brother Culotte, who often narrates for the player, and Alouette, an amnesiac who has risen high in the church's ranks thanks to her talent. The townspeople have recently been dealing with some zombie attacks, and it's our job to find out why. Priye thinks it's beneath her, so Culotte mouths off and gets hit. Alouette then does the same to her, establishing the pecking order of the trio. The group is part exorcist, part detective, and the game stresses that if we want to do our jobs right, we need to investigate.
Culotte, what is the foundation of any investigation?
The foundation is collecting information, Sister Alouette.
We'll do this by traveling around the city of Potipheu, speaking to every NPC that we can, some having info critical to solving the current case, others giving background information about the kingdom of Paprika. Then we have a gross old man make a pass at an underage girl. I hope this is the only time something like this happens. We head off to the Devil's Stomach, the old sewer system, and begin our tactical adventure. The battles flip back and forth between player and enemy turns, with us always getting to move first. Normal attacks give both sides a chance to do damage, so if your party isn't underleveled, enemies will frequently run up, try to take a swing, end up dying in the process. There's a little more to talk about when it comes to combat, but let's discuss something good instead. Many stages have multiple paths to check out, and as the game has hammered into the player's head from go, investigating is probably more important than battling demons. Exploring each map will often have the player discovering flashing event panels that we can interact with. These will give us additional scenes that can help unlock different, and often better, solutions to chapters. Deep in the bowels of the sewer, we discover an entire castle that seems to be the source of all the pesky undead. A little further in, we find a steel door that Alouette detects great sadness behind. The group does agree that they have to get in, so Priye... Inside, our reward is, the skeletonized mother and child, whose ghosts appear and reveal that they were trapped in the safe room when their kingdom was attacked hundreds of years ago, and that they slowly starved to death in each other's arms. This slight tone shift from a funny nunny girl kicking a wall down is made easier to stomach by some really outstanding music. And then the ghosts reveal they couldn't get out of the room because ghosts can't pass through lead, which is something. We continue exploring and find a bunch of orphans from town who are just playing inside the haunted, zombie-ridden castle deep in the sewers, who happen to discover a secret passage. Within, we discover a diary beside another corpse. It belonged to the brother of the king, which reveals that he was obsessed with the queen, and that when they were pushed underground, he went so far as to poison the king and his men. Out of fear she might reject him, he was the one who left her trapped until her and her child's death. We head to the throne room, and the party encounters the spirit of the king, who is prepared to fight, thinking that they're more invaders. His wife and son appear to calm him down, and they prepare to move to the next world. When his brother's specter appears, demanding that the queen stay with him, kicking off a fight. The goal for the stage is just to kill the boss, but when Culotte attacks, we get a voice line from an entirely different voice actor.
So many people have died because of your wickedness.
With a typo in it.
In the name of the Maiden of Light, I'll bring you to justice!
La Pucelle's re-releases came with some additional content that they couldn't get the original voice actors back for. And every time this happens, it's incredibly jarring.
Quit flapping around! Do you want me to smack you down?
We mustn't let our guard down around these bloodsuckers.
His hair is kind of creepy. I'm not gonna lose to that!
Winning gives the party a chance to tell the Phantom off for the deaths of so many innocents, and Priye tells him that there are plenty of fish in the sea? because his real crime was holding on to the unrequited love and not the other stuff. Anyway, Alouette begins to pray and unleashes a miracle that frees all the damned souls of the castle, amazing the other two. Culotte comments on how Prie is not, and will never be on their superior's level, leading to a chase in the now empty ruins, closing the chapter. We start with Prie and Culotte gathered with other members of the church for choir, helping to establish the deep lore of where Prie learned how to use a baton. Culotte explains how he and his sister became members of the church, that their parents died in a carriage accident, leaving them to be taken in as orphans. While Culotte acts mature, he's still very much just a 12-year-old boy that wants to meet the parents he barely remembers. Anytime he tries to ask about them, his sister shuts him down and tries changing the topic.
Hey, Prie, listen. I had a dream about Mom and Dad last night.
Ugh, Culotte! What am I gonna do with you? You'll never grow up, will you?
The party assembles to get their next assignment from the head of their church, Father Salad. He comes in dressed as a bear and shrugs off the same kick that made a steel door explode. He gives them their next case, investigating a series of locked door murders involving people's hearts being torn out. But all I can think about is how shitty that candelabra on his desk looks. We hear that another member of our troop, a Sister Olive, is on the trail of the killer, and that the game presents us with a choice of rushing to her aid or stopping in at the latest crime scene. The consequences for getting this chapter wrong is that our ally will die in a horrible, gruesome manner, and as much as it really seems like we should probably hurry to help her, we instead need to drop in on the crime scene. The NPCs around town make that extra clear in case we were considering otherwise. We find a message left by the killer, the same one that he's left at every murder scene, and from this, Prie deduces that all this murder must be because of a bad breakup. That prerequisite checked off, we head for Mount Tart, where Culotte talks about how it was where he and his sister grew up, only to be shut down again, and then insulted, leading to him running away. Prie immediately realizes her mistake, so we start working our way through our second dungeon. A stop-in on a side path lets us save Sister Olive from bleeding out, before we continue in our pursuit for Culotte and the murderer. We manage to find both in the nick of time, with the killer assuming the form of Culotte's mother in an attempt to rip his heart out, only to be rescued by a gun-wielding demon hunter. His name is
Croy Raoul,
and he's a lot of things, none of them good. He fidgets with his sunglasses and guns in every scene like he can't stop stimming, and his design is entirely, absolutely, 100% ripped off from Wolfhood from Trigon. He's also immune to the demon's attempts to change into someone from his past, because, coincidentally, he is the second person to join us with amnesia.
I have no memory of my past.
Culotte gets dragged off by the killer anyway, and given that the small child is in danger, we begin sending bears to hell. La Pucelle has a quirky system governing party recruitment, where we purify enemies and then murder them to make them join our party. While they won't see much use in actual combat, recruited bears can be stuffed full of items, and we can then combine them together into something much more powerful by giving them a one-way ticket to the no-no-bad place. What were we doing before all of this? Oh right, Culotte was kidnapped. We go to save Prie's brother. The demon pretends to be her dad and she clobbers the hell out of him, declaring that the dead don't come back to life. This triggers the man and he transforms into a big bat monster. Our party wins, leading to a confession that he was tearing out hearts in hopes of having his wife be returned to life. He was promised this by an organization named the Church of the Divine Mother. He apologizes for his actions, and Prie prays to the goddess to cleanse him with fire.
I ask you, Goddess Poitrine, burn his sins away with the flames of your judgment.
And it's beautiful how merciful the goddess is.
Jesus Christ! Oh, fuck!
Prie hugs her brother, glad that he's alright. And they have a moment where she promises not to mother him anymore. The siblings having reconciled, the chapter closes with Culotte watching his sister cry alone, and he realizes that the reason she avoided talk of their parents was because she wouldn't be able to keep her feelings in check. We see a service at the Church of the Divine Mother and the man in charge of it all, Noir.
In these times of need, our only source of strength and support is the Divine Mother.
He looks, sounds, and even kind of acts like anime service Snape, but without the child abuse.
What tripe. Humans are such sheep.
One of his hooded goons approaches to tell him that La Pucelle is taking care of the serial killer, but he brushes it off before yapping about divine utopias and his mom.
Mother,
Back with La Pucelle, we report our findings to Father Culotte, and despite how much Prie might want to bring the Church of the Divine Mother to heel, it's the dominant religion of the country. Any effort to take it down would probably end with them being labeled heretics, or the entire country imploding. Croy walks in and asks to join La Pucelle now that he knows the other church is full of demons. Father Culotte says it's alright if Alouette approves. And when she gives her blessing, we see Culotte froth and piss trying to mark his territory when Croy takes her hand. We then get sent to the Queen to tell her that we've solved those murders, where instead we meet Princess Eclair. She happens to already be close friends with Prie and Culotte.
You're always so straightforward, big sister.
Having met when they were younger when the choir visited the castle. Stepping in for her mother, the girl looks incredibly worn down, but addressing that problem will come later. Back at the church, we get our newest job of dealing with a wild animal that wounded some men when they were walking through the forest. Prie thinks it's not worth her time, and that whoever got hurt was probably asking for it. She and Alouette have another argument, yelling back and forth about how correct the Holy Book is. Alouette says that even if the men were up to no good, that the teachings demand that they kill anything that harms one of the goddess's children. She immediately ends up eating crow when their investigation uncovers that the men were poachers, out to murder the Lord of the Forest at the behest of the Church of the Divine Mother. We also run into a talking mushroom that mentions some miracle medicine, and then a pirate cat, both of which will be relevant soon. Alouette apologizes for her behavior by nearly killing herself healing the Lord of the Forest, and she and Prie finally become something like friends. And then Alouette says she's dressed like a skank. Culotte awakens in the middle of the night to some terrible thumping, and sees outside his window some kind of gigantic monster. He immediately tells the rest of La Pucelle, and despite having seen monsters and demons, dismiss it as him having a bad dream. Moments later, a call comes in of a large, unexplained creature, and before he can say "told you so," they all head to confront it, at Mayonnaise Harbor. It turns out to be a whale that the party needs to lead away to Mount Tart. It's the first time the game outright says that just leaving is the preferred strategy, and at this point he would be well beyond anything we've faced so far. However, La Pucelle comes with several means to expedite grinding, and all of it involves completing surveys. Each time we purchase an item, we can complete one and have a chance to increase the average level of enemies we encounter, or even triple the rewards we receive in battle. It's still kind of slow going, but we will get an incredible item and a unique ending if we do some whaling. Plot-wise, it makes no difference, as the party beats knees to Mount Tart, and then stand around wondering what to do next. Until an airship appears. On it, there is a crew of pirate cats, led by a blonde man with a pocket girlfriend fairy. They open fire on the whale, and then Prie begins to hear what sounds like a child calling for help.
It hurts.
What was that voice?
Help me.
There it is again. It couldn't be that creature, could it?
This kicks off our first battle where there are more than two sides. La Pucelle, the whale, and the pirates. The whale's defeat will send us down a bad route, so instead we're going to be killing cats today. We need to be quick before the pirates can take out the whale. But even as overpowered as the current party is, it would probably take more than a single turn to eliminate all of them. Thankfully, we can use La Pucelle Ragnarok's Purification Reaction. The glowing tiles and the flowing energy from them can be directed through placing characters on them, or in their flow, and facing them in whatever direction we need it to go. If we then use the same purification command we'd use to turn enemies to our side on these dark portals, every character standing in the flow of energy gets a second action. Even if you can't or don't need the extra movement, purifying these portals is encouraged, as they will spit out additional enemies throughout a stage if you're slow. The pirates are defeated, but not killed, giving them a chance to introduce themselves. Homard is their fearless womanizing captain.
Explorer of the Seven Skies, international traveler, and captain of the airship Escargot, at your service.
And we're the crew of the escargot, the Culotte gang.
While they engage in shenanigans, the whale transforms into a ball of light and flies off into the distance, with La Pucelle giving chase. We follow the light back to the city and discover that it belongs to a small, sick child. He's somehow been transforming his spirit into the monster each night, and unfortunately he's now at death's door, for reasons the game really never lets us know. To get medicine to fix his condition, we'll need to go to a distant mountain, and that's when the pirates reappear, offering us a ride on their ship. But because we saved the Mushroom Man in the previous chapter, we can now visit his village where we can just buy the medication to save the boy, and that just lets us skip to the ending without any additional stages. It's bizarre and kind of abrupt, but it is a nice way of rewarding us for being thorough. Sadly, what comes next can't be skipped. This chapter starts by introducing us to the church's greatest enemy. In the same way that the goddess has the Maiden of Light as her earthly emissary, the Angel Calamity has the Dark Prince.
And the Dark Prince gets his darkness power from Calamity herself. He has appeared several times in the past, and each time, many people have died.
It should be something we take seriously, and instead, we are sent to go deal with evil hair growth formula. We revisit the same forest from 2 chapters ago, fight through the same stages we already have, every encounter filled with the same hairball enemies, then discover that they're all spawning from a man using cursed shampoo so he isn't bald anymore. Then we have to run back and forth between him and his girlfriend in town, sorting out their relationship issues. It sucks, and I hate it. The chapter ends with Prie's head full of thoughts about what love is, and she decides, kind of out of the blue, that she has feelings for Croy. Her reasons range from saving her brother's life, which is decent, to the fact that he is literally the only good-looking guy she knows. The two do share a single moment where Croy mentions that he never thought he'd trust a woman in battle. And, that's kind of all the build-up we get to this romance. The only good thing to come out of this rushed mess is this gorgeous track, which makes me feel like I'm in an ending of Inuyasha. Beginning with Alouette dreaming, the goddess tells her to go to a place called Fatima, and when she tells the others about it, most seem certain that this vision is something they need to pursue. Except Prie, who is bitter over the fact that this might mean that Alouette is the one destined to become the Maiden of Light. She's particularly upset at Croy for his support of Alouette, since she's decided that this must mean he has feelings for the blonde. No one's heard of this Fatima place, so the party sets out for the royal castle, since the library is the best in the country. The queen tells us no, and Eclair tries to do us a solid by pleading with her, leading to the queen telling her own daughter not to call her mother in public. Even when Alouette stresses it might involve the return of the Dark Prince, the queen refuses. Culotte chimes in to say that La Pucelle can handle what's been bothering the queen. She explains that a demon, or ghost, named the Dark Knight, has been stalking the castle's halls at night, and she agrees to let us into the library if we take care of it. It's a bit of clever thinking on his part, as he had no idea that the queen even had a problem. He just guessed that someone so important would have a few. The Dark Knight appears and we defeat her, only for her to then transform into Eclair. Kind of without any prompting, Alouette declares it's a split personality of the princess, caused by the darkness in her heart. If we don't do anything, she'll transform into a demon. So she transports the party inside of the girl, so we can literally fight her inner demons. Yeah, everyone gives Alouette the side-eye over how casually she does this, but before anyone can really ask about it, she collapses. It's not the first time she's used a miracle that would kill the average person, and each time she's left at death's door from the effort. We get a series of maps where we encounter the two Eclairs, where it's clear that the stress of becoming the Maiden of Light and Queen is the cause of her split personalities.
Big sister, why do I have to do so many things I hate? I want to be free. Can't I ever be me? The things I really don't want to do? Why can't I say I don't want to do them? Yes, tell me, big sister.
When confronting the Dark Eclair, the party begins arguing about what to do, since Prie wants to save both sides of her. Croy pulls out a gun and prepares to shoot, considering the spiritual lobotomy to be the easiest and best solution. This devolves into another battle that ends with a healed Eclair in bed beneath blanket.jpg. The queen does keep her word and gives us access to the royal library, where Prie gets frustrated at all this nerd shit and kicks a shelf, revealing a secret passage. At the end of it, we encounter an ancient monster half fused to a wall. Hermes, as he's called, at least reveals that he's the mediator between the goddess and the angel Calamity. He'll tell us all that we need to know about Fatima if we give him some precious jewels, which we acquire by finding Homard on his crew's ship, and robbing it of its power source. He's actually pretty chill about this, and says it's fine so long as he and his crew get to tag along on the adventure, and forcefully joins the party. Their presence feels like it's just there to ensure that the people that hadn't been recruiting have the full 8 we're allowed to deploy each stage. The downside is that none of them come with any equipment, on top of being underleveled. We return to Hermes, where he gives us the history of the distant Fatima, a miserable, hellish place that ended up being destroyed in a single night. He alludes, unhelpfully, to knowing more about the reasons why and the nature of the prince before the party prepares to set off the next day. Eclair meets with Prié in the gardens, confessing her desire to be free of her responsibilities, and to stay with her and Culotte. And the two reconcile after all the brain damage. Father Salad, who was watching them both from the shadows for some reason, uses this to help convince the queen to let the princess join them on their journey. The chapter ends with La Pucelle flying off to Fatima, with a full roster of party members, many of them completely terrible. Our voyage begins with Croy having a nightmare about Persona.
I am you.
Which most of us can relate to.
Not again. I hate this dream.
On the bridge, everyone seems to be handling the trip rather well, aside from Croy. And Prié's concern for him is to the point she ignores a snippy comment from Culotte. Rather than be happy his sister didn't deck him, he starts to sulk and stomps off to look towards their destination, only to see that someone recently vaped. In Homard's words,
Bouncing barnacles! That's a death cloud!
Eclair brings up that her mother mentioned an alternative route through an island they can take, and suddenly a demon appears on the bridge, only for Prié to kick it out through the window. Thankfully, the goddess protects from rapid decompression. There are more demons to deal with, and the party heads to the rest of the rooms in the ship to handle them, and it has to be every room if you want to ensure we get the good ending for this chapter. We're strong enough that most fights, especially with the speed turned up, last at most a minute by this point. The bigger problem is that these late joining party members are going to take some work before they become decent, thanks to one of La Pucelle's more annoying systems. Stats, like characters, gain experience in combat, but only if their equipment has a point of that stat on it. The more points, the faster growth that character receives in that stat. Leveling them gives passive abilities like regeneration, increasing their range and proficiency with purification, or, most importantly, random stat buffs in combat that are accompanied by a flash of light. It's clunky, poorly explained, and the phrase random stat buffs should be enough to know that this system is bad. We make our way to the engine room, where we can meet one of Noir's 3 Dark Lords. We handle easily. The demon manages to escape, but not before setting everything on fire. Croy gets the bright idea to piss on it, gets uppercutted, and then Homard cuts in to give us some advice on our imminent crash.
Testing, testing. All hands, this is Captain Omar. We're about to experience uncontrolled flight into terrain. I just have one piece of advice for all of you. Don't die. That is all.
Everyone survives the crash, but again, this miracle came at the cost of Alouette's health.
There she is. She's lying on the ground.
She dreams of the goddess Poitrine once more, who tells her that it isn't her time yet to rest. With no other options, La Pucelle is forced to trek through the jungle towards the cave that will get them to Fatima. We get a lengthy scene of Eclair and Homard speaking about book learning versus real-life experience, and then the grown adult man talks about how beautiful he finds the 13-year-old princess. This continues to be a thing for the rest of the chapter, as it focuses on how Eclair handles her first real outing into the world. Even heading into the ruins that will take the group to Fatima, the game makes sure we know the actually important part is the grooming. And then we fight a tentacle monster. We had the option to take an alternate route to weaken it, but a special ending and an incredible item demand that we face it at its strongest. When we finally make it to the other side, we see the beautiful land of Fatima, and have the moment ruined as Homard keeps making sexual advances towards the child.
Hey, don't those two make a nice couple?
The sun shines and doves go soaring through the air, and it feels as though the universe itself is trying to tell us that we're supposed to be feeling something positive about all this. It's horrible, and I would take literally anything to get my mind off.
You can't get away!
Oh, thank God, a flashback to a mother and child about to be killed. In a cutaway to Noir's past, we learn how he becomes the man he is. The child of a human and a demon, he was hated by others, and in defending himself...
That demon killed my son Crouchot and his friends!
Yeah, no, I'd kill a child with that name too. His mother ends up giving her life to protect him, and tells him not to do anything crazy, like start a church to bring about the end of the world. Returning to the main party, Croy enters a village and has another vision of the woman he saw when first meeting Prie. A kind man offers us room and board. Homard asks to take a bath with a child. I contemplate what I'm doing with my life. And then the villagers attack, having been possessed by the second of Noir's lieutenants. The fail condition of this stage is pretty clear, with the party having to quickly run past all the regular enemies and bum rush the boss, which our overleveling makes pretty simple. Despite winning in a single turn, Prie manages to get herself put up on the cross, which seems to trigger Croy, causing him to unleash a terrible power, and Alouette to give us the worst delivered line in the game.
Oh, my head feels like it's going to split wide open.
Thank you. The next stage still has us avoiding killing the villagers, but now we can only use Croy, who is juiced to the gills with dark power. The scene after has Croy slowly caving in the Demon Lord's skull, attacking anyone that tries to stop him. Our reward for not killing any innocents is a piece of candy. The morning after, everyone has suspicions of Croy's true identity. Culotte and Alouette speak privately about it, as well as about her dreams of her own death. The boy declares he'll protect her, and she thanks him, saying he's just like a little brother to her. Then she kisses his cheek, and this kills the boy. Prie is defensive of Croy, shutting down any real attempts to talk about last night's events before they continue their journey. La Pucelle finds a town buried in snow, populated by ghosts. They had their souls bound there when the Dark Prince was born on the nearby hill, and heading there, they're confronted by the demon who escaped earlier after his attack on Homard's ship. We win easily, and he tries to escape for a second time. The party isn't having it, but he warns that killing him would release enough dark energy to obliterate the nearby lost souls. Alouette thinks that's better than continuing their existence, and the party begins to squabble, before the ghosts take it into their own hands to end the Demon Lord. The last one remaining leads them onto a tree, the only place in the town that the sun shines, and they discover that Croy's name is carved into it, alongside a woman's, Angelique. The nearby flower glows, and the surroundings shift, confusing everyone. Alouette, continuing to pull shit out of nowhere, declares they've traveled in time. She says that it must be the work of the goddess, and while everyone else seems skeptical, Croy says that he recognizes their surroundings before leading the party back towards the village. They run into the woman from Croy's visions, who greets him happily.
What's wrong, Croy? I thought you said you were going shopping. Oh, I know. You forgot something, right? You're so absent-minded.
Prie is less than pleased, and it goes from bad to worse when Angelique reveals that Croy is her fiancé. She's warm and inviting, offering a place for them all to stay. Later that evening, Angelique reveals that her Croy is predisposed to darkness, and she the light. Despite the nature of her power, it's viewed just as negatively, with people in town worried that witch hunters will come for her. Angelique is almost too perfect a person, fine with all the hardships she has to endure, since it means she can help others. Prie isn't handling it well that her apparent rival in love is such a better person than her, and matters are made worse when Angelique reveals that she's pregnant. While everyone processes that, a man barges in saying that there's been an accident, and asks for Angelique to come to the hill to help. A few hours pass, and Alouette reveals that Angelique is going to be killed that night, that it will cause the birth of the Dark Prince. She didn't tell anyone because they aren't there to change anything, only to observe. Everyone else declares that to be bullshit and rushes off to help. The first person we see is the man who called for Angelique's help, having lured her there as a trap. He brags about how much money he received for turning her in, calls the guards over, and continues to mock the party. His reason for handing over the innocent woman was because he had feelings for her, and seeing her with Croy turned him bitter. It's Chapter 1 all over again. So begins the most difficult set of battles in the game, because we can't kill anyone if you want the good ending. This is doable for the first two stages using purification reactions, but the last stage boxes us in with no way of avoiding confrontation, which means we have to send out low-level goons hoping to bait enemies into allowing us to move past them, which fails. So we do it again, and 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 again. Eventually, we make it through, just in time to see Angelique be killed. She bleeds out on the cross, just as the Croy of the past arrives, causing both versions of him to begin to break down.
Angelique and I were hated and persecuted.
But instead of hating people, she helped them, and always with a smile on her face.
But the moment's ruined because Croy's voice actor keeps changing between lines.
None of this would have happened if it weren't for human beings.
With his transformation into the Dark Prince, we return to the present. Prie attempts to calm Croy down, but Noir appears and appeals to the murderous side of him, and both vanish. And for all of our troubles, we get a generic item that sells for 50 money. The scene shifts to 50 years ago, with Alouette revealing that she wasn't the Maiden of Light, but a Maiden of Light, all of them having thrown themselves at the Dark Prince in a vain effort to stop them. The battle ends with both of them on death's door, as a boy from a nearby village arrives, having been concerned for her. She explains that she isn't strong enough to destroy the Dark Prince, but she can seal him in ice and use a miracle that would erase his memories. The cost is that she has to lose her own as well. She will pray that, in the future, someone is able to help ease the hatred in the prince's heart, and that there will be allies waiting for her. In the present, Alouette says that the only reason she hasn't died is because there's still some part of Croy not fully lost to his transformation. Prie isn't in any condition to help fight, having lost her nerve with all the recent revelations. Alouette isn't much better off since her powers as the Maiden of Light are nearly tapped out, and once they are, regardless of Croy's condition, she'll die. Even without her memories, she was always rushing people along, because part of her knew that the end was coming. Culotte steps up to lead the party as they rush to deal with an invasion of demons at the harbor. They receive a psychic message from Hermes, where he says he might be able to unleash the latent potential inside of Culotte and Eclair. The last of Noir's demon lords appears, and Homard confronts him, having been looking for this particular demon for having injured his father. It was alluded to in several past scenes Homard was seeking revenge, but most of the dialogue about his past is optional. The two junior members of La Pucelle head to Hermes, where he tells them that they'll both have to take a test that might cost them their lives. This leads them back into Eclair's heart. If she can get the dark half under control, the princess will unlock incredible new powers. And Culotte will get a power-up too, because even in a chapter devoted to his coming of age, he's kind of an afterthought. The maps are reused, we don't face any new enemies, and our reward for winning is... Eclair finally comes to terms with her schizophrenia, and gains the ability to freely transform into her dark alter ego. Culotte, meanwhile, gets a single new ability. It's called Kitty Kitty, and it's absolute trash. The pair rushes back to the harbor to help Homard before he uses all his life force to slay the demon. And Eclair reveals her other self to him, who Homard immediately flirts with, despite her still being 13 years old. Back at the church, we see that the place is torn to hell as the prince confronts Alouette and Father Salad.
You think I'm gonna let a young punk like you beat me? Enough talk! You will be the first to die!
Sister Alouette!
He reveals that he was the boy that Alouette spoke to in her final moments 50 years ago, and he founded an entire church to make sure that her prayers came true. She's horrified over how he wasted his life for her, and he dismisses that, saying he couldn't be more satisfied. Then he squares up with the Devil's number one, and prepares to throw hands.
Dark Prince, do you think you can handle Salad the Demon Killer? Come and get me!
Back to Prie, she has a vision of the goddess who tells her to go to Alouette's side. She doesn't know what to do, feeling unfit for the role she's been trying to attain her whole life, not wanting to fight Croy, and angry at the goddess for forcing everything on them. And the goddess actually answers her, explaining that she's not really a god, but just the image of one that people have forced on the concept of light, same as the angel Calamity for darkness. Father Salad's starting to reach the limits of his stamina, and he thinks of his wife, and is content knowing that she's strong enough that she won't shed tears if he dies here. Prie rushes in and says she's done moping, and that she's going to knock some sense into Croy, kicking off a fight. We win, but Noir suddenly appears, and backstabs the Dark Prince. His reason for finding Croy wasn't to have an ally in his evil plans, but hijack the connection he has with the Angel Calamity, so he can exterminate all life. He collects the unconscious Croy, insults the party one last time, and then dips. Prie puts on her big girl stockings, and everyone readies themselves for the final battle. The chapter starts with Noir's secret base being unveiled, a giant floating castle that belongs to some ancient race named the Tenjin, and it really doesn't matter. Alouette explains it, but basically all we need to know is that Croy is there and about to be sacrificed so Noir can eat the devil so he can undergo apotheosis. Prey wastes no time crashing the ship into it, and we start our final dungeon. Most of the enemies here are a huge uptick in difficulty compared to previous chapters. But thanks to all the grinding and ritual bear sacrifice, we're ready. The biggest issue is at the end of the first half, we have a battle where we can only use Homard, as he finishes taking his revenge against the demon that escaped previously. The demon doesn't die though, and escapes, again, while Homard collapses in his own blood, thinking about a child. The next set of maps are unique because we can't actually win them, as enemies will respawn infinitely, so instead the party has to rush to the next area, which means they have no chance to heal. There are even multiple dead ends in this section just for whittling down the party's strength. It's an interesting idea that would have been nicer if it had been introduced sooner. Noir is waiting for us, killing his own ally when he begs him for help, and talks about how the utopia he's been going on about is solely for himself. Prey calls him cringe and Alouette karate kicks him to death, and in his last moments, the party wonders why Noir didn't summon the Angel Calamity, since he probably would have won with her power. He says it was just because he wanted a fair fight, to see which side would win. Prey offers a prayer out of sympathy, and then an argument breaks out. Croy is still going to awaken as the Dark Prince, and that'll be the end of them all. It's at this point that Alouette says that she can send them into his heart, the same as she did for Eclair. But the effort will drain the last of her strength. Culotte begs for her not to, and everyone demands they find another way where no one has to die. Alouette just ignores them and sends Prey in. There she finds an unresponsive Croy, who she tries everything she can to get through to, before finally confessing her feelings. This awakens him, and the two prepare to return when the Angel Calamity appears.
Must kill all humans.
Or maybe it isn't her, and it's just the manifestation of Croy's darkness? What's clear here is she's the last thing standing between us and beating the game. We can only use Croy and Prey for this final fight, but both are more than strong enough to finally put an end to this. The final scene opens with the main pair sharing a silent moment over Alouette's grave. The rest of the party arrives, including Homard, who survived his injuries. Culotte gives us a very where are they now wrap-up of everyone's lives.
Brielle and I are still working as demon hunters for the Church of the Holy Maiden. Father Salad retired from the church and is helping at the orphanage. Oh yeah, I almost forgot. Eclair and Omar have gotten engaged.
You know what? No. Croy is intent on leaving, planning on going on a journey to make amends for his actions as the Dark Prince. Culotte mentions that he can't decide how he feels towards his former friend, since his survival did come at the cost of Alouette's life.
But I can't go on thinking that way forever. I'm sure she wouldn't want that.
The credits begin to roll as Prey and Culotte run off towards their next adventure. And if things feel somewhat unresolved, that's because they kind of are. The Angel Calamity may or may not be defeated. Prey doesn't become the Maiden of Light, and it doesn't really mean anything, but she still dreams of becoming one despite her earlier falling out with the goddess. Croy is freed from his demons, and then up and leaves, with little to resolve his relationship with Prey. This might be because there were sequels planned that never happened, or it's just a bad ending. But Prey has appeared in other Nippon Ichi games since this one, as an alternate timeline version of herself where she becomes a demon overlord in a much skimpier outfit. It's disappointing if you enjoy this game, but it should be clear why most of La Pucelle was tossed out. Its entire first half is a bunch of B-plots to introduce its cast, and they still end up feeling underdeveloped. The romance it spends the most time on would be on an episode of To Catch a Predator.
You knew she was 13, she told you.
Bouncing barnacles!
The difficulty falls off a cliff, its mechanics are bad, and it still has one thing I really like about it. Most of the characters in the story are miserable for no fault of their own. Alouette gave up her life to be the Maiden of Light, Croy was forced to become the Dark Prince, Eclair lived under the pressure of becoming queen and saving the world. Even the goddess deals with everyone expecting her to solve everything when she's little more than a helpless avatar to cosmic powers. Other people's expectations cause so much pain to everyone in the story, and becomes the sole thing that sets Prey apart. She's the only person willing to do what makes her happy, even if it might not be what's right, or what others want from her. It makes her unsuited to become a Maiden of Light like Alouette, but it means she can be a better person. Noir makes a good foil for her, as he's the biggest victim of people's perceptions, and the one that values his own desires most over others. He wasn't accepted by humans or demons, who saw too much of the other in him, And rather than pretend to be either, he decided to burn the whole thing down and make a home for himself. And as much as he is lost in his own ego, he can see a similar conviction in Priya, and puts off achieving his grand plan just to test himself against her. Living the life that you want to live, when others, even those closest to you, want differently, is always worth being reminded of. And even if this game didn't have much of an impact on the world, it at least had one on me. Thanks for watching. Get the hell out.